My parents' friendships were never about love or connection, they were transactions built on what they could gain. I never wanted to believe it. The idea that my parents, the people who raised me, loved me, and taught me to value honesty and hard work, could be gold diggers felt impossible. But as I've learned over the years, reality doesn't always align with the image we hold of the people closest to us. The truth revealed itself slowly, piece by piece, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Growing up in a modest suburban neighborhood, I always thought of my parents as regular, hard-working people. My dad had a steady job at a manufacturing plant, and my mom worked part-time at the local library. They weren't wealthy, but they made ends meet. We didn't have much, but what we had was enough. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see the subtle signs were always there. My earliest memory of their behavior happened when I was about 8 years old. A new family moved into the neighborhood, a wealthy couple with no children and a sprawling home that dwarfed the rest of ours. My mom was quick to bake them a pie and introduce herself, dragging me along for the visit. At the time, I thought she was just being friendly, but now I realize it was something else. Over the next few months, my parents began spending a lot of time with them, volunteering to help with small chores, attending their parties, and often coming home with gifts, fancy wine, gift cards, even expensive gadgets. I remember overhearing them one night when they thought I was asleep. My mom whispered excitedly about how the couple had connections that could help my dad get a better job. My dad replied with something about how building relationships could be beneficial. At 8 years old, I didn't understand what they meant, but the tone of the conversation stuck with me, a mix of calculation and excitement that didn't feel right. As I grew older, I noticed this pattern repeating. My parents seemed to have an uncanny ability to gravitate toward wealthier people. It wasn't just the neighbors. They befriended bosses, successful co-workers, even the parents of my wealthier friends. They were always so kind and helpful, offering to babysit, run errands, or house sit. People loved them for it. But I started to see a pattern. The relationships always ended once there was no more to gain. When someone moved away or their financial situation changed, my parents' friendship would quietly dissolve. In high school, the cracks in their facade began to show. My best friend at the time, Sarah, came from a well-off family. Her parents owned a chain of successful restaurants, and their home was everything ours wasn't: spacious, luxurious, and filled with expensive trinkets. My parents took an immediate liking to them. They invited Sarah's parents over for dinner, helped with their garden, and even offered to drive Sarah and me to school whenever her parents were busy. At first, I thought they were just being nice. But then, I started noticing little things, my mom casually dropping hints about how much she admired their home, or my dad mentioning how he'd love to work in the restaurant industry. One night, after Sarah and I had gone to bed, I overheard another conversation between my parents. My dad was frustrated that Sarah's dad hadn't offered him a job yet, despite all the help they'd given. My mom reassured him, saying it was only a matter of time. That was when it hit me. This wasn't kindness. It was strategy. By the time I went to college, I had fully realized the extent of my parents' behavior. They had a knack for identifying people with wealth or influence and ingratiating themselves just enough to benefit from the connection. It wasn't outright manipulation, but it wasn't genuine either. They weren't scammers or con artists in the traditional sense. They didn't steal or deceive blatantly, but their friendships were transactions, built on a foundation of what they could gain rather than mutual respect or affection. The thing is, they were good at it, so good that most people never noticed. They were charming, generous, and attentive. They made you feel special, like you were the center of their world. But once you had nothing left to offer, they'd quietly move on. What made it worse was their inability to see anything wrong with it. They genuinely believed they were just being resourceful, taking advantage of opportunities as they arose. My mom would say things like, We all help each other in different ways. Or, it's just networking. My dad called it playing the game. The final straw came when I introduced him to my college boyfriend, Aaron. Aaron was everything they could have hoped for in a potential son-in-law: intelligent, kind, and, most importantly to them, from a wealthy family. His parents owned a successful tech company, and his trust fund was more than most people make in a lifetime. From the moment they met him, my parents turned on the charm. They invited Aaron and his parents over for elaborate dinners, fawned over their accomplishments, and even started dropping hints about how they'd love to retire in a place like their summer home. I watched in horror as they laid the groundwork for what I knew would be another transactional relationship. It all came to a head during the holidays. Aaron's parents invited us to spend Christmas at their estate, and my parents eagerly accepted the invitation. What was supposed to be a relaxing holiday turned into a nightmare. My mom couldn't stop complimenting the decor, the food, the gifts, anything to ingratiate herself. My dad spent hours talking shop with Aaron's dad, dropping subtle hints about how he'd love to get back into consulting. By the time we left, I was mortified. Aaron, to his credit, was understanding, but his parents saw right through it. They politely asked that my parents not be invited to future gatherings. And I couldn't blame them. When I confronted my parents about their behavior, they were defensive. My mom accused me of being ungrateful, while my dad shrugged it off, saying, "You'll understand when you're older." That was the moment I realized I had to distance myself. I couldn't keep making excuses for them. Couldn't keep pretending their behavior was normal. It wasn't easy. But I started setting boundaries, limiting how much they could involve themselves in my life. Especially when it came to Aaron and his family. Now, years later, I have a family of my own. My parents still try to worm their way into the lives of wealthy acquaintances. But I've learned to keep them at arm's length. I love them, but I can't condone their behavior. It's a difficult line to walk, balancing love and accountability. But it's the only way I know how to protect myself and my family from their relentless pursuit of opportunity. Sharing this story isn't easy, but I hope it serves as a cautionary tale. Not every gold digger looks the way you expect. Sometimes, they're the people who raised you, the ones who taught you right from wrong, the ones you love the most. And sometimes, loving them means recognizing their flaws and learning to protect yourself from the fallout.